This is Global Solutions, recoupling the world. This session is Inclusive Growth in a Globalized World. Please welcome Gabriela Ramos, Chief of Staff and G20 Sherpa to the OECD.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Dennis and Dirk, for gathering us together. It's amazing to have you all here. I think that we were expecting to have very good outcomes of this T20 this year, but you are really overpassing our expectations, so congratulations. I hope you will make a great impact to the G20 this year. I also commend you for having put this topic in the agenda. Inequality, of course, is everywhere. We're talking about it everywhere. We're providing the evidence everywhere. I led the work of inclusive growth at the OECD, and we have been, of course, gathering all the data and all the impacts and all the issues related to inequality. But I have to say that we cannot see inequality and inclusive growth delinked from all the other challenges that the predecessors have been pointing at. The whole issue related to inequality or the impact of growth in the environment has to do with the growth model that we have followed up. And we need to change that growth model. The growth model that failed us in three accounts. First, by not preventing the financial crisis and the accumulation of imbalances. Second, by not preventing the increased inequalities and not even knowing. We just got to see how far we got into leaving so many people behind. And third, by not getting the impact of our growth in the environment. You have the figure, 40% of the population in the OECD have been left behind. Their income and their standard of living remain completely stagnant for the last decades. And this is the OECD economies. What can I say? When I hear that people say, well, but developing countries are doing better. Yes, but they are from the very low base. They still have 50%, in my country, in Mexico, 50% of the population living in poverty and very high informality. So I think this is something that gathers us all. Income inequality, of course, wealth inequality, worst. You see that the top 10% can gather 50%, 60% of the total wealth in our economies, while the lower 10% gets only 3% of it. So it's a very unequal distribution of the outcomes of growth that is creating this sense of disenfranchised societies and lack of cohesiveness. And the problem is that inequality of income brings inequality of opportunities and inequality of outcomes. And this is the dynamics that we have been documenting at the OECD. Because if you are born to a low-income family, you just don't have the chances. And I really commend the way you frame the issue, because this is a question of why don't we provide the opportunities? It's not that people want to have redistribution, that's fine. We should all go for redistribution, but it's to have the opportunity to have their own capacities expressed at the highest level, and I think this is a very important element. Low-income groups accumulate disadvantages in terms of low-quality education, lower life expectancies, and less access to quality jobs. We have documented all that in the OECD. I invite you to take a hard look at all this information. And then the digital world comes. With all the promises, with all the really encouraging opportunities that it brings, but it's opening another door of unequal access and unequal outcomes. We have called it at the OECD the breakdown of the diffusion machine. Why? Because we said, well, productivity is stagnant, but not for the frontier firms. They are growing at 3-5%, but the lower group of firms is also stagnant in their productivity. So this divide between the very, very dynamic, high-profile firms and the low income or low capacity firms is also very important. And this harms growth. And I think this is one of the most important messages that we got. I was very proud when we were with Chancellor Merkel, Secretary General Gurria was with Chancellor Merkel, and Chancellor Merkel asked, where did this inclusive growth, because I hear it all the time, comes from? Where did we put it? And of course, everybody said, it was me, it was me, no, it was Piketty, it was OECD, it was Ennis, it was who was, it doesn't matter. I think we all agree. I'm very happy that we're all talking about these issues. But I was very proud that the ILO head said the conversation changed when the OECD said this harms growth. you're really wasting your assets, you're really wasting your people, you're really wasting your regions, you're really wasting your firms. And this is how we want to frame it if we want the people that deal with the economy take it to the core and address it with more sense of urgency. How does it harms growth? Well, just think about it. The low-income groups invest less in the education of their children and probably receive low-quality education. If you accumulate those assets that are not developed, of course, it has an impact on potential output. And we have a figure that is very striking at the OECD. If you are born at a family whose parents do not have higher degree education, let's say high school certificate, you have 15% chances of reaching that level. Whereas if your parents have that degree, you have 65 chances. So it's just, and this goes and accumulates and accumulates. The main casualty, as the predecessor have said, trust. And trust is the glue that brings our societies together. And so it's not just a matter of being a good Samaritan, it's a matter of keeping our societies together, and I think that this is the time to do it. So how do we move from here? I think we have too many issues related to documenting the facts. The action is pretty slow. I was happy that the G7 asked the OECD to produce some suggestions of an action plan, but as I said, we need to change the growth model. We need to get away from growing first and redistributing later to include equality considerations ex ante, which should avoid informing our policies just by looking at aggregate figures and look at the distributional impact of the policies we take. Is just reframing and re-engineering the way we do economic policy. This is very important, even with the tools, and we have at the OECD the new approaches to economic challenges to document that. We need a multidimensional approach of well-being to avoid the silo approach and develop comprehensive policy packages. We need to focus on the 40%, the bottom 40% in our policies. Take a look at how the policies are going to impact their well-being. And we need to go granular, not just to say education is important. Education where, how, for whom, and where do we prioritize for this to come? We need to ensure a progressivity of the tax structure. We have made progress in the OECD with BEPS, but there are so many issues related to the global economy also and the global standards on RBC and many other areas. As I have been called to stop, I want to say that we are not without a roadmap. We have the SDGs, we have the climate agreement. Let's not just get ourselves in this sense of concern. Of course we are concerned because there is a major player that is rethinking how do they deliver on the climate, but let's, the rest of us, implement what we agreed. As the Secretary General says, let's go for implementation, 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 not in that order, but let's just move faster because we know what we have to do. Thank you very much.